Scott Morrison's actions as PM during the pandemic are being questioned amid revelations he was appointed by the Governor-General to take over a super department. Joining me live now is Political Editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew, questions coming thick and thin. Who was aware of this, and maybe even how many portfolios might have been involved?
Well, it just widens out. So this morning we've revealed, Tom, that Mathias Cormann, as Finance Minister and Government Senate Leader, did not know that Scott Morrison had sworn himself in as Finance Minister during the pandemic. He did not know until this was revealed in The Australian on the weekend. It's part of a book called Plagued by Simon Benson and Jeff Chambers, where they outline how Scott Morrison tells Hunt that he's swearing himself into Hunt's portfolio of health as kind of a protection measure, a countermeasure if Hunt gets COVID. And Simon Benson and Jeff Chambers also revealing it also occurred in finance. Mathias Cormann, I've been able to establish, had no knowledge of this whatsoever. I'm told Morrison ended up making no decisions in that finance portfolio, but it is extraordinary he wouldn't tell his government leader. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has reacted to this story. After his trip in Melbourne, he will be going straight to his officials in Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet and getting a briefing on what this means and what steps should be taken and whether it's legal for Scott Morrison to secretly take on all these arrangements. So overnight it's been revealed by news.com.au, after the pandemic's worst phase, Scott Morrison took on or swore himself in as Resources Minister, Keith Pitt's portfolio. And he made a decision there to knock off a gas project off the New South Wales coast, which was politically contentious. In the last hour, the Australian Jeff Chambers again has revealed federal court documents say that on April 15 last year, 11 months ahead of that decision on the so-called PEP 11, Scott Morrison was appointed by David Hurley to take control of the entire Department of Industry, Science, Energy and Resources. Now, you know, Tom, having been in Canberra for a long time, any sort of move on ministerial arrangements, traditionally it's announced in the Parliament, even if a minister's off sick for a day, and yet these aren't even acting minister arrangements by Scott Morrison. He has actually sworn himself in to the portfolios. Now, I've heard from the Morrison camp in relation to this. Their view is that the same Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet officials who will be briefing Anthony Albanese are the ones who said this was okay. The book Plagued said Christian Porter, then Attorney General, a friend or so-called friend of Mathias Cormann, obviously he didn't tell him either, approved this arrangement through an administrative instrument in terms of the ministerial portfolios, which meant it didn't have to go to the GG. But these are extraordinary events. You and I have covered many swearings in of ministers and new cabinets. As a minister falls, that occurs. Not bothering on this occasion, not bothering to tell us, the public, Scott Morrison, that he was secretly swearing himself into additional roles. You might say, Tom, what's the difference? He's Prime Minister, surely he can overrule ministers. Not when it comes to certain decisions, such as perhaps declaring a biosecurity emergency or approving coal mines or knocking back coal mines or gas projects, or indeed on immigration decisions. There are, in various acts, provision for the minister to make the decision, in some cases without interference by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, exactly right. A whole lot of things which, you know, the lingo is always by a stroke of a pen this decision can happen, and essentially nobody knew Scott Morrison had the pen, if you like. I mean, there was enough controversy, Andrew, of course, over Alan Tudge, for example, who was not the minister but described as still in cabinet in some sort of weird grey area, and there was enough controversy over that when we sort of found out many weeks or months later when the PM was pressed on it. So this really is that sort of secrecy, sneakiness, whatever you call it, on steroids.
Well, we'll hear from Anthony Albanese. No doubt he'll be questioned about this at his doorstep. But my understanding is his view is this is a serious breach of the Westminster system, of Westminster conventions. And there are reports, of course, that this could lead to court challenges to various resource projects decisions, including that one on the PEP 11, that this could become a point of contention. So I guess we wait for Scott Morrison to explain himself, because perhaps he really should, Tom, on the record.